thought it would be cool since you have now started season 9 of SG-1 that we can talk about one of the new characters that we actually meet in season 8, but she comes back in season 9, which would be Vala, and also some of the other new characters that come in season 9 because there's a lot of new personnel as well as a new enemy. And so maybe we can talk. We've talked before about the character dynamics in SG-1 at the beginning of SG-1, and I think we said, well, we'll also talk about it again once the cast changes. And so maybe I would start by asking you your initial impressions of Vala Mal Doran when we met her in the Prometheus Unbound episode.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love her so much. Like, I couldn't remember, her character has always stuck out in my mind from the first time I watched through. And obviously, you've named your daughter after her. And so then, maybe that's also why the name just has always stuck out in my mind. But like the character, I just always remember her having a lasting impression, but I honestly couldn't really remember anything about her character or how I had like vague memories. So when I saw her this time, I was just like, "Oh yay, finally!" Because I knew she was coming in at some point, and I was always wondering when. And I had totally forgotten about like the amazing, funny dynamic of her and Daniel, and yeah, so I guess just like when she was introduced, I was just like really excited that she was finally there because I was wondering when her character was coming in. And it just helped me like remember just like how much like I love that character because it's just like it's not so much just her character that I love. I love the dynamic between her and Daniel that also helped me love the character even more. But I just love how she almost reminds it's like, yes, she's always making, like, innuendos and, like, being really, like, over the top with that, but it's like she also kind of seems like that character seems, like, weirdly, like, kid-like in a way, even though she does the dirty jokes all the time. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like there's something about her that she's just, like, always having fun and giddy and, like but then when it gets to the moments where maybe something serious happens, like, it makes those moments even more powerful because you're seeing her react quite differently, and, like, just, like, the actress that plays her is amazing, like, I love her so much, and, yeah, I just really love the character, it's great.
No, I totally agree. And I think with the sort of change that O'Neill kind of took a backseat role, and one of the earliest kind of features of the show, I think, was this continuous banter between O'Neill and Daniel.
Right. Yeah.
And I think especially in the beginning because Daniel's kind of motives and his like way of approaching things was so different than O'Neill, and so this was one of the primary features and I guess areas where they got humorous like quotes and dialogue came from O'Neill and Daniel. And I think in a way the Daniel character evolved, and so Daniel also had different motives, ideals, and ways of interacting with the world. And then also O'Neill took a step back, and I think that left a little bit of a space for a character like this. So to me, like I always saw Vala as kind of like a not a replacement for O'Neill, but filling kind of that void in a series with the
Oh,
banter with
yeah.
Daniel, but in a really nice and evolved way that didn't necessarily it wasn't like O'Neill. It was just now it was adding this element. And also she's like
Yeah.
this quick thinker and has the same kind of pragmatic approaches to things. So I thought it was I found her a really, really nice addition. I also really love the character too. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, like, too, like, that first episode that she's introduced, um I don't know if you even thought of this, but, like, the movie like, have you ever seen the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt?
a long time ago, yes, yeah.
And their whole vibe, like, one of, like, the famous scenes from that movie is them, like, basically trying to beat the shit out of each other, but then at the same time being very attracted to each other, that it's, like, this strange vibe, and I totally got that vibe with Daniel and Vala when they're, like, trying to, like, beat each other up, but then at the same time, it's this really strange thing, and I always wondered, like, I can't remember when the movie with Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt came out, but I wonder if it was around that same time that they wanted that same dynamic, like, or maybe it had nothing to do with that, and they just happened to get that same dynamic, I don't know, but it reminded me so much of that movie at first, like, where it's just kind of, like, the types of scenes they took of them, like, battling it out, but yet, like, it's, like, had this weird, like, sexual tension vibe going and, like
Totally,
um,
totally.
so it's, like, that's what I thought of too with that first episode, but I do think, like, th that's, like, a perfect description of how you were saying how it kind of, fulfilled that role that was no longer there with O'Neill, and I do also think, then when it continues with her character onto the following season, um, season 9, it's like that's one thing I definitely felt with her character is because I found it so strange that, in the beginning of season 9 that it's like Jack O'Neill's just gone. Like, you don't really get, like, an answer as to like, fully as to why he's just gone. Like, logically, I knew he was gonna be gone, but I couldn't remember if there was, like, something that, like, they actually say to kind of explain it. Like, they don't fully explain it, really. He's just kind of gone, and then Sam's gone, and I was just like, "What the hell? Why is she not here?" And, like, my suspicion was actually right when I watched a recent interview of Amanda
Yep,
Tapping where she was mentioning it was because she had had her baby, so she came partway through. And so during that time of both of them being gone, that could have been a disaster for the show, because
totally.
you're being introduced into all these like new characters, and um, and I felt like the Vala character really. And I know we have other characters we were gonna maybe mention too, but like I definitely feel like the dynamic between how Vala is and the dynamic between her and Daniel really helped glue everything together and helped
Totally.
you not realize as much the all of the other characters that were no longer there, because I feel like that could have felt really empty and sad and like, well, at first I was just like, "Oh, like, I don't like that both of them are gone, like, that's not cool." Like, at the
Right?
same
Yeah.
time, like, it helped me as a watcher still really enjoy it because I wanna say, like, probably, like, every episode I've seen her in so far, like, because, like, I'm watching it and keeping track of it on an app, and on the app, you can, like, put, like, how many stars, like, you think it is. Like, all of them were my favorites, and I'm just like, "They can't all be my favorites." Like, I have to think of a better way of, like, rating these, but, like, every single one of them I absolutely loved, like, just the storyline and everything, and she happened to be in all of those ones that I was just like, "Oh, these are so good. Like, these episodes are so good." So, like, yeah, I think definitely I'm always, like, mentioning this, but I'm always amazed at how the writers are able to really help you shift and change with the show, where I think fans could potentially be very mad or skeptical or upset that certain characters are gone or you see less of them. Um, and they somehow find a way with their writing and with the amazing actors that they do have in and all of it combined really to still pull you in, to still help you enjoy the story just as much as you liked it before. So, yeah.
Totally. No, I completely agree. And I mean, I'd be curious if when Prometheus Unbound first happened, I actually don't know if they knew they were bringing Vala back or not. But
Ah,
just so
yeah.
you know, it was before Mr. and Mrs. Smith that
Oh, was
Prometheus
it?
Unbound. So actually they copied it
Oh,
happened.
interesting.
Obviously they copied Stargate.
Yeah, because it
Um,
totally gave that vibe, man. Maybe someone was like a Stargate fan and they're like, "Oh, that
yep.
would be good for the movie."
Totally. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I know like the fight scene is completely famous and I know what you
Yeah,
mean and it's totally
yeah.
giving that vibe. But it's very interesting because I agree that it's also you have this situation that the enemy is different. And so and then you have the
Mhm.
leader of the team being different and the leader of the SGC being different because I mean O'Neill, I think they say he moved up to a different so home world security or something, and so he is kind of in a higher position that brings him away from the Stargate command.
Oh, did
And
they? Okay.
And I
I
think if
must have missed that completely because, like, I didn't catch what they said, so I just thought he retired or something.
Yeah, no, I think they just mention it, and I mean, he comes back. Like, he does come back in later episodes, so I think then it's quite clear what's going on. But I think Hammond is totally retired, so
Yeah.
he is completely retired. And I think then you have the situation, you have a new
Wait, is
general,
Hammond completely retired?
or did he? I know he moved up in season 8. I can't remember if he
Yeah, I
retired.
think he's still working in that same position that they had moved him to because there
Okay,
was an
maybe.
episode I watched where he was like doing a speech for it was that episode where I don't know if he's like giving out an award or something. It had to do with the
Mhm.
episode where that guy had that virus that was kind of spreading. There was
Okay.
um the similar kind of virus thing that they're trying to figure out the problem with. Um, maybe wait, was that maybe part of the episode that I haven't fully finished that had multiple parts? I can't remember now.
The Four Horsemen. Maybe yes, because it's a prayer plague, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yep, it
yeah,
might be in that. So yeah, yeah, you're probably right. He probably isn't retired. But they have a new general. They
yeah,
have a new leader of SG-1. And then yeah, as you said, Amanda Tapping was on mat leave for a little while. And so it's a situation where yeah, and then yeah, you have a different they have kind of introduced a different enemy, but actually I thought it was so brilliantly done that they have this new character that they introduced that then came back, and the way she came back was also the way that they used to kind of, in a way, reimagine or restart the story of the new enemy. And at the same time, they found a way to force her to basically be stuck there even for a couple further episodes. So
yeah,
I thought that was really clever.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah, no, that was just so funny how, like, they have it that it's, like, because of that bracelet thing, it causes them to be, like, stuck because I if I'm remembering correctly, because like I've said, sometimes I binge watch so many shows that all kind of blurs together, but if I remember correctly, when she comes back in season 9, um, is it because
mhm.
she's wanting to trade or I think doesn't she come to them wanting to trade something or tell them information of something, and then that's when she sticks the bracelet thingy on Daniel, but she's like ulterior motives, right? She has ulterior motives as to why she's
Mhm.
there. And I think that's the first time she comes back in season 9, right?
Yes. So she wants to, if I remember right, find some treasure and like this inf ultimate treasure, and she has a way of finding it, but she basically holds Daniel hostage by putting the band on him, if I remember right, and in order
Yeah.
to find it. And so,
Yeah.
but I think then there's this weird, and they use the weird communication device, and they get transported to that other
Oh,
galaxy.
yeah.
And I mean, it's
Uh,
also it has a
that episode, man, that episode. Because
I
that's
mean
the
that
one where she gets burned alive, right? Oh,
oh yeah.
that was horrible. I
Yeah.
forgot that that happened. Like, I thought they were gonna stop it, and then it just happens, and you're like, and you see this little crusty hand, and Daniel's all upset. I'm just like, oh my god, like, oh, oof. Poor Vala.
See, I know that it was terrible, but one thing I have to say that I do find it very nice in a way that I mean, I don't know how other people feel, but in the beginning of Stargate, like the enemies were kind of goofy in a way.
Yeah,
I mean, they were fantastic. They were perfect for season 1, 2, 3, 4, that the Goa'uld were goofy. And as it went on, they became less goofy. Anubis was a little bit more dark, and
mhm,
Ball had this different energy about him. And so I think the sort of overtop goofiness started to pull back as things evolved. And I thought that was it was like it was great for the seasons, and then it was great for the later seasons. And I thought it was really great that they immediately started with something that was in a similar avenue as the other enemies, that it's still derived from some kind of a historical or mythological or religious concept, but yet it was just so much immediately you knew it was so much more serious
Yeah.
and dire, like immediately right off the bat than
Yeah.
Apophis. Like then you go see Apophis, like you go back and rewatch Apophis and think, oh, what a goofball.
Yeah, yeah. And I think j and you says, "Ah, what a goofball," right? Because, like, you cut out for
Mhm.
a second with your internet there, so I just wanna make sure I caught that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, they do increase, like, the scary factor of the villains as you continue on, and, like, with the Ori, it's just like, not only do they look really creepy, right? But like their eyes kind of looking like almost like they have really bad cataracts. um, but just like how insane they are with like, like everyone must follow the aura, otherwise you die basically. And they do it, it isn't like, like and it's kind of cruel too, like in terms of like how they approach it. It's like they either burn you to death or give you a plague of some sort, or like all sorts of stuff, and then they're not very forgiving, so it's like they go and some that then like get scared and want to follow them can't, because like they've made their decision, so they're gonna die. So it's just
Right?
kind of like, at least that's what I've seen so far with the Ori. So yeah, like I think that moment too with Vala, like where she does get burned and then gets revived basically. I felt like that really showed a depth to her character that you don't see up until that point. And I think that's where I feel like
Yes.
the Daniel character then gets closer with her, because he realizes just how much she has went through just with that alone, along with, like other stuff that maybe she's also experienced. But like I feel like they kind of insinuate that he seems to then care for her more after that, I think, like where a lot of times before that it's like he's just always irritated and kind of sarcastic and just like acting like, just get her away,
Mhm.
and so I think as horrible as that moment is for those characters, like I feel like that kind of helps them bond even further because of going through that together.
So, yeah, no, I think that that moment was very special. And I think it's interesting. Like, I love the development of how Daniel approaches her character because I think she immediately comes off as where every motive she has is to steal and it's, lie, etc. And she continuously does. I mean, she
Hmm.
doesn't change for a while. And I mean, it's quite clear that she is in it for the treasure and she's uh, will scheme and manipulate and lie
Hmm.
to get what she wants to get. But I think it starts showing the cracks of where he sees that there's more to her character. And I
Hmm.
think it also starts showing us that there's more to her character. So it's kind of like are on that same journey as Daniel in that regard.
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
but then at the same time, when she like is doing other things or leaving or whatever, then she'll turn around and steal. So we're also on that journey of frustration. Like I love that or the character never has this turnaround where then oh she's complete. Like there's always this element where she'll steal something or do something like that, and so
Yeah,
we're brought also on that roller coaster of oh man, like of course she was
yeah.
lying.
Yeah, and it's what I like too about it though is like the lying and all of that is done in a very kind of like funny and cute way. Like it's
Yes.
like, it's as like annoying as it is, like, and if you're those characters experiencing her doing that to you and stealing things, like, it's serious and all, but like the way they have her portray that, it's like always a very
Mhm.
humorous thing. And like that's even like when they go to one of the previous places, because she had previously been a Goa'uld, right? Like she had
Mhm.
what was the name of Was it
Katesh.
Katesh? Yeah, and when they went back to the land that still thought she was a gold, she had, like, a special outfit she wore where it changed her voice, and, like, it was, like, this funny moment of her being, like, not letting everyone else know that she was gonna be doing that, and then she goes away and says, "Oh, I need to change my clothes," and they're just thinking she's being, like, particular about changing her clothes, and then she comes out pretending she's their god, and, like, it's, like, things like that that you're just like, "Oh my gosh," like
Yeah.
it's like she's so over the top. It's like, "Really? You've been doing this where you're pretending you still, like, are a god, like, just so you can solely, like, come back and try and get all of the treasure that you left there?" Like,
Totally, right? And I mean,
yeah.
and it's also brilliantly done too, because at the one hand, they're showing that aspect of the aspect of the character that wants the treasure and the money and will scheme them. But then you see the other aspect where, yeah, the character was taken over by Gould. So actually, Vala has had a lot of struggle, and
Oh, yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
like it starts to kind of expose these cracks in this facade, because I think, with Vala, a lot of it is it's a huge facade that you see, and the more that you kind of get into the character, the more I think that's kind of stripped away, and also she goes through a lot over the course of the series, and I think when she returns, you've now been at the point where she helped blow up the Supergate, and I think when she returns, you learn even more, and there's kind of more that the character has gone through. So it'll be really interesting to revisit that
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, just to see for the character development, and how what I think is most interesting is that we are kind of in a way functioning in a similar as SG-1 and the people working with her, and how we are led to interact with and discover the character. So I think that's
Yeah.
kind of it's kind of a cool thing, but yeah.
It's interesting too how they had so many episodes with her in it, specifically while Sam Carter was gone.
Hmm.
And then as soon as Sam Carter comes back, then Vala's gone. So, like, I wonder, like, if, because, outside of the show, it's like the reason Amanda Tapping wasn't there was because of having her baby. That, like, I wonder, like, if it was a case of, like, they realized how strong the Vala character was, and because Amanda Tapping wasn't going to be there, then they wrote in these episodes with Vala, because that really helps you not feel, at least my opinion of it, it really helps you not feel those missing parts, right? Feeling like,
Yep.
because it's like when that season starts and you have like, um, the new what's his name, Cameron Mitchell.
Hmm.
You have him, and I also like how they tie in his characters too
Me
to
too.
being
Me too.
one of the fighters in the Atlantis, like not like when it was SG-1, but it was like when they were trying to find Atlantis, and then they were at that outpost area, right? And there was a big battle,
Yep.
that like they got saved from, how they kind of tied him into being, one of the people fighting them off.
100%. Yeah.
Like that was genius. Like that was great to kind of tie all of that in.
I thought so
Um,
too.
but, like, what I was saying is, like, I felt like when he was introduced, like, it was great, like, I've really liked him from the start as well, but it felt very strange that, like, SG-1 was totally non-existent at that point, and you have Teal'c off in another world fighting for, or dealing with, like, the freedom of the Jaffa and all of that, and, um doing his stuff there with Braytac, and then like and everyone's in their different locations, that it felt a bit sad. Like I was just like, oh, like this is weird, like because I didn't catch what they were saying like O'Neill was doing anymore, so I was just like, okay, like I knew like from watching before that he leaves, but I couldn't understand what actually happened with his character to have him leave. Like I didn't catch what they had said, so like yeah, so I just think, like, once the Vala character's then gone, like, I do, like, feel really sad, like, when, like, there's no more of her, because all of those episodes had, like, while serious, they had a lot of humor to them that I really enjoyed.
Hmm.
And then it feels like then for now that she's not there, that humor's a little bit gone up to a point. Like it's not that same vibe. Like I'm still really enjoying all of the episodes, but like I do really miss her character. So I'll be glad when she comes back. But yeah, I wonder if that was something that was like written in after they realized that Amanda Tapping wasn't going to be there as well for like half the season, you know?
Yeah. I'm sure because otherwise it would have been a very complicated situation of how to deal with Mitchell being with other people and trying to get SG-1 back together in that sense. And so I think it made a way that since they had several episodes where they were off, like off the even off SG-1, I think
Yeah.
it was very effective. I actually thought it was a brilliantly done. And then that they had her leave, I think because they thought of her really as a replacement in that sense. But then they brought her back, I think, because people really liked the character. And then also, I think her character had just such good chemistry with Daniel.
Yeah.
And I think, I think it ends up working. I feel like Mitchell and Carter have extremely good, I actually really like their vibe together.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's great, and I love how when he finally gets everybody back together, he does bring up that, they're both the same rank, so none of them is the leader, and so it gives this different dynamic where before they were all kind of part of somebody's team that was superior to rank to them, and they were under a leader. It kind of becomes more of a democratic vibe because they're
Mhm.
all two aren't, as you said, two aren't military, and then the other two are the same rank. So I kind of really like that it has that kind of vibe. It's kind of new and interesting.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah, I thought it, yeah.
cause one I had a question actually
Hmm?
with that. I had a question with that where, um, because initially they have it that Samantha Carter's I forget what she's doing, but she's doing something else. And then when she comes back, is she technically, even though she's also a colonel, like is he's then like technically the leader of SG-1, right? Or is it that
I th
they're not?
I
Like,
think theoretically he's the leader. I think theoretically he's the leader because he's brought back to lead SG-1 after they have all left, right?
mhm,
So they're all doing something else. Daniel's doing something else. Teal'c's doing something else. Carter's doing something else. There's no one to lead SG-1. And then he's brought back. And then he realizes he's not leading SG-1. And then he brings them back together. But then I think he has that moment where he said, let's be real. Teal'c's Jaffa, Daniel's non-military. You and I are the same rank. I'm not leading anyone. But I don't know if in
okay.
theory, technically, he's the lead.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Cause I missed that, I missed where he says that, so, that's the one
uh,
downside of probably, um, binge watching so many shows is, like, somehow my attention was elsewhere that I didn't catch him say that, because, like, I was questioning that, I'm just like, "Well, wait a second," because before, like, Carter was the one that was the lead and, like, she was gone, sure, but, like, then when they come back, like, how does that work, you know? And I knew, like, he was kind of like seeming like he was like the leadership role there, but like I wasn't sure like how that worked out. Like I didn't catch them saying that, which now makes sense.
think Mitchell overall, I really like his introduction into the show because I mean, it's similar, I think they had to do this way of introducing a character that had some kind of similar energy to O'Neill because especially with the pragmatism and the sort of, I mean, I wouldn't say O'Neill is positive, but he has this like can-do attitude or,
Mhm.
we do it attitude. And I think they needed someone like that. And I would say Mitchell is even a little bit more positive. He has a little bit more optimism, I think, than
Yeah.
O'Neill, where O'Neill kind of had, I think, to counterbalance Daniel, he had more of this realism and sarcastic way of dealing with things that worked extremely effectively in the situations they were in with the gold and with Daniel being sort of this like tra la 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 la, like let's all be, he was very empathetic and he was a little bit of an idealist. But
Mhm.
now you have Daniel being less of an idealist, although he still has the same empathetic nature. He's been through a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and the enemy is much more severe. And so I think to have a character like Mitchell who is he has he has a similar energy to O'Neill, but he is a little bit more positive, a little bit more of an optimist, and like he's always quoting his grandma and stuff, and so
Yeah,
yeah.
because doesn't he have a bit of an accent too, like, kind of like
Yes,
a
yes.
southern twang to his voice, like, I forget where he's supposed to be from. I don't know if they ever say, but, like, I would imagine, like, the South of the US, obviously, but, I don't know if they actually ever say, but yeah, he is always quoting his grandma and, like, and then talking about, like, I think when they first, like, uh, meet the Ori, I think, like, he's mentioning about his grandma in church and all of that,
Yes,
like
yeah. Yeah,
um,
it's kind of a nice tie-in because I always took like the Ori that is kind of a little bit of representative of how people can misinterpret, written documentation, and it's kind of in a similar way. And so the fact that his grandma is always taught, like he is always quoting the Bible, I took that as like this interesting interplay because they do the same thing with the Book of Origin, which they're
yeah,
also interpreting in different various ways. And so I thought that was kind of interesting and connected him a little bit with that. But I actually I also love the introduction of the character because, as you said, I love how he is tied in with the Lost City episode, and that he
mhm,
was part of that attack. And I love that they show that he was basically just super determined to get back on track, and that they showed they promised him he could run any team he wanted if he got through everything. And immediately right off the bat, you're like, okay, this is someone that's already involved, so they don't need to be necessarily they're not going to be in that position where, sometimes when new characters are brought in, they're like, what? There's a Stargate program? Oh my gosh, which is, it's fine, but at the same time, it's nice that this particular character they don't have to do that with. And it also
yeah,
shows immediately that he's determined and will overcome
yeah,
all odds immediately. So,
yeah, I think that was a great tie-in to, like, have it be that, like, his, fighter plane thing crashes, right? And it makes it that like they think he's never going potentially couldn't walk again and things like that. Because it really shows an element of his character, of his determination and strength. And you can tell through that he would be a great leader. And it's like if they didn't have that in it, like you were saying, like if they didn't have that in it and they just had him join, I don't think it would have showed any depth to his character whatsoever and would maybe be harder to connect with him. Like you just
mhm.
think, okay, he's just here to replace like O'Neill, even though he
Yeah.
wasn't really there to replace O'Neill because O'Neill at that point was in a different position. But it's kind of like, giving that similar vibe. And so I think it was probably important, I would imagine, to have a good depth to the character from the start for people to connect with, which I think they definitely achieved. Like because I couldn't remember like how I felt, first time watching through, when O'Neill left and this character then comes in. Um, but I think it was probably roughly the same of like at first being like feeling a little unsure, but like there's something about his character you just immediately like. And so then as you continue watching that first episode where he's introduced, it's like just everything about how they introduce that character, then it's like you cling on to that and it feels just like any of the other characters you've really liked watching the whole time through SG-1. Like I didn't really feel a difference. It's kind of like similar to when we were talking about when Jonas was introduced. It's like
Mhm.
they perfectly like blended him in a way that makes you enjoy watching that character just as much as the other ones. So it's interesting how
Totally.
they're able to do that because I know like um other shows don't do that so seamlessly,
Mhm.
or like even at the worst case thing. I remember when I was like a kid, I would watch like soap operas. I don't know if you ever used to watch soap operas.
Like Days of Our Lives, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And what I always hated with those is like, I don't know, like because they're never ending. The shows are never ending. So they're always changing actors with who plays that character. So then all of a sudden they'll come in with a different actress to play the exact same character you've been watching, and all they have is a voiceover saying, "So and so is now playing the actress of Hope for Days of Our Lives," or whatever, like is now playing such and such a character.
Really?
And like they would have this voiceover just explain how they're playing that character, and then suddenly you're supposed to just be used to it. And it was always so weird. Like I remember like specifically actually with Days of Our Lives, I remember there being certain actresses I'd really enjoy as a certain character, and then they'd leave, and then they'd introduce a different actress, and eventually you'd get used to it. But it was always so like abrupt and strange. And like I know like Stargate is obviously a totally different type of vibe, but it's just like goes to show you like how it's nice when like they actually think about ways of helping the viewer kind of get used to the changes.
Totally, 100%. And I think that that was done very brilliantly in a situation where there were multiple changes all at once.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting because I think the first time I watched it through, I was a bit hesitant about season 9 and 10 too. But now I would say, like, probably if you ask me, oh, what's your favorite season of Stargate? And I would probably say season 10. I mean, especially watching concurrently with Atlantis season 3, like at the same time, because it's just everything ties in. There's guest appearances from people here, left, right, and center. I mean, O'Neill does return quite a bit in season 10 of Stargate as well. And so it's interesting that the first time I was a little bit unsure, and then now it's like I really love those seasons. And I think it's just especially watching it from the beginning, like when you watch it in order and see everything progress and you watch the things concurrently, everything makes so much sense. And it seems that they did such a really brilliant job too of making sure that the show didn't just remain dated, that it didn't
Mhm.
remain a 90s show.
Yeah.
Because I think at the point you're in season 9 and 10 is already like the mid 2000s.
Mhm.
And so um, there were different political issues. The political climate was different. I think in the beginning of SG-1, we were on like the US was under President Clinton, which was a completely different administration feeling and everything than when we were in season 9 and we're 3 or 4 years after 9/11. And it coincided with a lot of, I think, policies that were trying to be pushed in Congress and different things. And I guess that also brings to why I also think they have General Landry, the
Mm.
new general. And I think
Mhm.
it's very interesting because to me, like when I watch General Hammond, he's like the quintessential general of the late 90s. He has this kind of Americana military vibe, and he's from Texas, and it, it's very sort of in the military, and he doesn't really deal much with the politicking and other things. He kind of actually avoids it and doesn't engage. And because that's not, I think, something that's such a focus at this time. But I do notice with General Landry, now you have these weird oversight organizations like the IOA, and you have the all these other sort of civilian organizations that are starting to kind of infiltrate and um, come into and have to contact with the SGC. And I think Landry is actually a really good general for dealing with this stuff because he has a little bit more of like a political vibe and
Mm.
a like that kind of vibe to him. And I think so it's
Yeah.
interesting that it didn't just grow in the sense of them replacing characters, but it's like they also adjusted the characters with recognizing the way things were changing in the world at that time. So,
Yeah. 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 No, I mean, I think
right.
with Landry, it's like, yeah, he definitely gives a different vibe. I think immediately I also liked him as well. I don't really know why, but I just did. I think the actor Beau Bridges that plays him, by that point he's like a very well-known actor that, um I think, in the Amanda Tapping interview I watched, she says they were so like happy to actually have gotten him to even be on the show. Like, he's
Hmm.
very highly thought of as an actor. And so I think he is a very good actor. I've always known his name. I don't remember what I've seen him in, but I always knew of Beau Bridges. Like, and so I think just as an actor, he's great. But yeah, I think exactly what you said, where he gives off a vibe that is fitting for the time, I would certainly agree with. Um, yeah, I guess I don't really have too much thoughts on his character really, other than I feel like it did just feel like he kind of fit in. Like nothing
Yep.
stood out to me where it felt like off or uh yeah, and it's like he kind of his personality I haven't quite figured out yet, if that makes sense, like within what I've seen so far. It's kind of like you can't tell like if because like sometimes I feel like they would have characters that would come in and lead, and they'd either be very go with the flow attitude where they don't really like they're just willing to kind of go with the motion, and then there's the very like strict attitude, and I feel like he's like a blend. Like he does definitely doesn't seem like someone, and obviously within his job position too that makes sense, right? But like I feel like he's kind of like a
Totally.
blend of what we've seen before with others that have led in that same position. And so it's like a perfect blend of all of that. And then they kind of leave you initially kind of wondering because, then you're also introduced into Dr. Lamb being like the doctor that basically takes Dr. Fraser's spot. And when they introduce you to Landry, then it's like, so when I refer to him, because like I was looking at his like Stargate page, it says Major General. So Major General Landry, is that like what they call him?
I guess it's yeah.
Yeah, okay. Um, but he they give an indication that there's something with him and Dr. Lamb, and it's like I remember both times this happening to me where it's like I know that it's his daughter, but the way they introduce them in the beginning, they make it like maybe she's like an ex of his, even though she's really, really young for him. And I'm just like, um, this is weirding me out just a little. Like, are they really gonna go there? Is that really like an ex-wife of his? Because she looks very young for him. Like she could be his daughter. But like just like you don't know yet because of the way they have her interacting with him, you just
Yep.
don't know. And then like thankfully it was
It's
what
his
I was hoping for, which is that it's his daughter.
uh-huh,
And it's just
exactly.
that he was never really in her life is what I'm gathering with how they have it is what I'm guessing as to why she's so like bitter towards him. Um but yeah, and then I mean I guess that goes into the then also being introduced to Dr. Lamb, right? Like
Mhm.
and yeah, I also really love her character, which again, like I feel like there's a vibe of the Dr. Frasier there because obviously both being doctors, like there's a similarity with how they kind of discuss things, which makes sense because they're both like experts in their field. Um, then there's something slightly different about her. I mean, I guess like I'm kind of hoping as it continues to kind of see a little bit of like emotion in that character, if that makes sense. Like I think that happens later down the road, but it's like right now it's like which makes sense like with what she has to deal with all these serious medical cases coming in, she has to be very very focused and very serious to do her job well. And she's incredibly smart. So like that was kind of my first vibe of her, is that like I really like her. I think again a seamless like replacement kind of deal there as well. And then it leaves you wondering like, okay, what's the deal with her dad and her, like what's the story behind that? Like she's always very like stoic looking, stoic, I don't know if that's the right word, but she's very like, you know no expression on her face a lot of times, but like purposefully so. It's like she's trying to keep herself strong, and not let things get to her. Um,
Yep.
but then there's also like the very childish side of me that knows that in real life she ends up later marrying Michael Shanks. And so I'm just like, oh, I wonder what they're like thinking there. Like, do they notice each other yet? Like, like what's going on?
I mean, actually, we should check the timeline because they might have already been married when she started the show. Because if I remember right, they actually met when he was on her show, Andromeda.
Oh, really?
So that they may have already, I mean, I don't know. I know that in season 10, Michael Shanks goes away for a couple episodes from paternity leave. So,
Oh. Wow, that would be interesting to know. See, because like I don't remember what happens with her character, but I think I have a memory of something happening between her and Daniel Jackson, but I could be wrong. Maybe that was in something else, but I do remember seeing interviews of them together like now, where she
uh-huh.
talks about a time in an episode where she kisses him, but she wasn't actually supposed to kiss him and she purposely kissed him in that. And that was like before they were together.
Okay, I
And
just
sh
Googled it, and they were married in 2003, which was already before season 8 of Stargate. So,
Really?
yes.
Oh my god.
So,
Wow. So I that's interesting. See, I always thought like it was a case of him meeting her on Stargate and then them eventually realizing. So in my mind, I'm just like, "Oh, like when do they notice each other?"
you're like waiting for the sparks on set to fly. Oh my gosh. I mean,
Oh.
I don't know how it says 2003, and I think Stargate season 8 came out in 2004, so season 9 would have been 2005.
Although
Yeah.
if you think about with filming, filming is sometimes like depending on I don't know how it works with shows actually, because I know like with movies, filming can be as far as a year before they actually edit it.
Yeah, but I think then it would be 2 years before they were already married 2 years before
Oh,
season
okay.
9.
Okay. Ah,
Yeah.
well, that's
So,
cool. That's cool.
yeah.
That's funny. But I mean,
Yeah.
what were your initial thoughts of her character?
Yeah. No, I also really like Dr. Lamb. I mean, I thought once again is a nice character for the situation in that they're dealing with a much more complicated medical situation on a wide scale with the prior plague. It's a bit more grave, and so I actually thought like she has this sort of matter of fact. She almost has a little bit of like, I mean, it's interesting because the one thing where you can tell that her and Landry might be related is they both have a little bit of like this deadpan humor that they both have. And I think
Ah,
that's kind of
yeah.
interesting because Landry does it too. And I mean, you see it more often. He has this kind of weird way of delivering that it's very deadpan, but he's being humorous, but sometimes you can't tell if he's humorous. And I think she also has a little bit of that delivery, which, like you said,
Yeah.
also comes with the fact that she has this like less overtly expressed emotional kind of
Yeah.
front. But
Yeah.
I also was very the first time I saw this, I didn't know what relationship they had either. I was a little bit like, okay. But what kind of tipped me off is that at some point when he is with Vala and he says, I have a daughter about your age.
Ah,
And I think,
yeah.
like, and so then you think, oh, okay, then that makes
Yeah.
sense. And so, but I thought it was also really cool that they had them having some kind of relationship
Yeah.
to each other that, because I also really like when they had Sam with her father and how that relationship kind of strung through the show. And I thought
Yeah.
it was, I mean, it's kind of similar in a way because you have Dr. Lamb is also this character where she's this doctor and she is trying to appear always kind of strong and um no cracks in emotion or anything like that. And I think maybe that is also part of a result of like this emotional barriers if you have
Yeah.
a parent that's kind of absent or um I'm assuming like in the case is probably absent due to, you know, he has a high stress job. I mean, this is kind of
Yeah.
the implication. So,
Yeah. Yeah. But then it's like they kind of allow his like proud dad moments to shine through. It's like when she was like doing like the surgery on I don't remember what the guy was like. It was an episode where they're doing surgery on someone for like 9 hours. And when she was doing that, I think like Daniel Jackson says something along the lines of, "Oh, wow, she's good," or something like that.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Oh, yeah, that's why I hired her," you know? And it's like you could tell like it was like a proud dad moment of being really impressed by his daughter's like
Yeah.
abilities and stuff. And it was cute to like kind of like add that in there where it's like he's trying to say it in a professional manner, but you can tell like there's more to it. Like he's just really proud of
Right.
her. And yeah, so it's yeah, I mean exactly right. Like I never thought about it how you mentioned how before that it's like you have the dynamic of Sam with her dad and then, you know, sadly her dad then dies, right? And so you don't have that relationship in the show anymore. And so this does kind of also replace that kind of vibe as well. Which I think I never even thought about. Like that's interesting. But yeah, I think that's kind of like all the newish characters, right? That not
Mhm.
newish, they are new, like new characters, I believe so far, at least that I've seen. Um, and yeah, I do think it all seems to work nicely, which is good. You know, I think had they done it differently, you know, maybe the show wouldn't have lasted yet another
Mhm.
season. It could have been a disaster. I would imagine that could be like a very nerve-wracking thing for like the whole team of people to kind of,
Oh,
you
totally.
know, have a bunch of new people when for so many years it's a specific team. So like I think they did so well with that. Like um and yeah, here's to hoping that eventually they come back with SG-1. You know, like come back
I know, right?
with more Stargate and like I had kind of referenced before,
Yep.
like I had watched Amanda Tapping on a recent interview, and she did seem to basically validate basically what I'd heard that other YouTube channel talking about when they were talking about a possibility of Stargate coming back as a show or a movie or stuff. It seemed like she was it seemed to me like she had mentioned as if a lot of them, like her and Richard Dean Anderson and Michael Shanks, were all recently talking about how they would be totally down for coming back in some capacity. Like, but it's just
It
a
would be
matter
amazing.
of things, you know, coming together. Because there's a lot of things that need to come together before any of that is done. So here's to hoping that actually becomes a thing. Like, and like, you know, like I was just thinking about it and I'm just like, you know, so many times these studios, like, it's all about like money and all about like, um, you know, like rightfully so, I guess it makes sense. That's their work, right? You know, they want to make money off of what they do, obviously. But like, um, I kind of was just like, gosh, you know, there's so many Stargate fans around the world. If they even did like a little bit of a crowdfunder to like have people like donate like towards starting the show so that and then like have the studios also bring in their massive budget, like that would show them that like Stargate fans are behind this. Like they want to see it come back. Like you will make money off of it. Like bring it back,
Totally.
people.
Tot and I really think that if they bring it back, they have to either an enemy or another people out there, maybe it can finally be the Furlings. One of them has to be based, like, with ancient Sumerian, because I think it's really fascinating that Sumerian is a language isolate, and it would totally make sense with the, whole aliens visiting the Earth thing, because where did the language come from? Why are there no languages that are similar to it?
Oh,
So I
yeah.
think they could definitely do something based in ancient Sumerian that would be amazing.
That
I
would
would
be
love that.
amazing. Oh my gosh. That definitely would be amazing. But yeah, I guess I mean this is probably a good ending point. I guess like our questions to the viewers would just be something along the lines of what did you think of the characters we mentioned, the Vala character and all the other new characters that came in season 9? Like what were your initial thoughts when you were watching it?
Yeah, and how do you feel about season 9 and 10 of Stargate SG-1? And did your thoughts change if you rewatched it? Because I'm a huge fan of those seasons, but I also know some people say it's not SG-1 anymore, but I would like to know others' thoughts. So definitely talk
Yes,
about it in the comments.
but no spoilers for season 10 because I haven't
Yep.
rewatched it yet.
Don't put any, don't, just without spoiling anything, just tell us what you think.